Out of pure curiosity, I decided to dig in the files released by the Epstein estate. And I think there's a general framing I can call out that a lot of the analysis hasn't really explicitly dealt with and that can help us draw better general conclusions. What the documents show is that at a certain level of wealth and power, we begin to deal with the dissolution of the traditional ideas of institutional, national, or even moral affiliation. These documents give us a window into a parallel reality where those inside it are allied only to power. To make the best sense of this, we can start by thinking of the difference between topography and terrain. When you want to navigate a place, you need to make a map of it to describe its features. The map is the topography. The actual landscape is the terrain. The map, the topography, is always going to be an abstraction, essentially a story about the terrain. And if you're carrying a map of the Colorado Rockies while trying to navigate the Alps, well, you can see why that's not going to go so well. We have a similar issue when looking at the Epstein affair. The fire hose of documents are the actual terrain. Emails, depositions, testimonies, videos, photos. They're the woods, fields, and forests of a terrain. But we don't have a good topography, a good map to hold up to that terrain to make sense of it or navigate within it. So we're most often holding up maps we do understand, like these were some bad actors acting independently, or this has to represent a corrupt institution or a cabal with an established hierarchy, or these events happened in these jurisdictions and represent these crimes, which is clearly the way that governments understand things for the purposes of prosecution. But the real story we can use to better understand what we're dealing with is contained within the documents themselves and referenced many times in many contexts. This is a system of power and influence that does not correspond to most people's maps or even understanding of how the world works. That's often the point. Traditional political theory has it that state power is what has legitimacy. That is, that all subjects of a state recognize the state's power to exercise coercive authority. Yet as wealth and power concentrate to unprecedented levels, we get a new dynamic, which is that individuals with sufficient resources can opt out of reliance on or cooperation with state institutions entirely. Epstein himself recognized this in Michael Wolff's profile of him, where he says that in the past, only governments had this kind of money, reality-altering money. In fact, it used to be that the rich, reaching a certain point of philanthropy, merely hoped to make the world a better place. Now they want to change the world. Wolff goes on to say, Epstein's apartness or parallel life reflects much of the otherworldly characteristics of the wealth revolution that began in the late 1970s, an increasingly parallel world, a self-invented one, at further and further removed from the ordinary one. This is the key to creating a better map that can help us understand Epstein and the people surrounding him. This isn't really a stable topography at all. It's a network, a topology. A topology is a system that is not about distance and relationships between relatively stable entities, like the distance and differences between New York and LA. Instead, it's about the strength of relationships between relative entities, like the results of New York and LA playing one another in a sports ball tournament. Don't look at me for anything sports ball related. This is a metaphor. One season, New York may win, one season, LA might, or another one, they might not play one another at all. Or one city's team might even leave the league entirely or become some other city's team. So the team's relationship has nothing to do with where they are located in space or what those locations might mean to observers. In a topology, unlike in a topography, we can bend the map and connect and reinforce entities within it without any relation to where those entities might look like they belong. This is pretty much the same structure as the internet, and you can think of it that way too. So in Epstein's network, which is the network of extreme wealth and power, the underlying structure is an architecture of nodes with connections forged and reinforced by power relationships through which information, resources, and influence flow. In this network, it doesn't really matter that this person is a citizen of this country or a member of this government or institution. It's all relative, all part of creating personal advantages and arbitrage opportunities. What matters is the number and diversity of connections and their relative strengths. So you can start to see that network power, unlike state power, does not depend on institutional legitimacy or permission. It's interesting that Joshua Cooper Ramo's book, The Seventh Sense, was in Epstein's documents because it's about exactly these issues. Ramo's thesis is that power in today's world emerges from the ability to build, connect, and control networks, not by using more traditional means of authority. He also says that any institution, state, or person that does not develop an intuitive and nimble understanding of these networks, which is the seventh sense alluded to in the title, will be rendered obsolete, basically wiped off the map of power. Ramo talks about 3 ways that networked power is deployed and maintained, which we can see plainly in Epstein's communications. One is asymmetrical control of information. The more information you have about others without them having information about you, the more leverage you can extract from it. You're also in a position to predict and manipulate their decisions by understanding their desires, weaknesses. We see a lot of this in how Epstein solicited personal confidence from powerful people. He offered a lot of advice, but he didn't seem to seek any, save with people he was paying for specific services. This is also one of the points in doing favors for others. It puts them in your debt, and they're more likely to be willing to offer more information. Gate control is the second way that network power is deployed. Ramo stresses the importance and power of gatekeepers in any network system, saying, in an age of network power, no position is more important, formidable, influential, or profitable than that of the gatekeeper. Epstein functioned as a gatekeeper in many areas, connecting access to wealth, scientific patronage, political circles, and social status. He was constantly connecting and referring people to one another, which reinforced this role. This is also the point in becoming part of various institutions, whether philanthropic, academic, or private. It isn't just reputation laundering, it's access to information and gates. Think of institutions as surfaces that this network moves around and through, more than closed, stable boxes. Institutions are points of leverage and amplification. The third is trust graph manipulation. Topology isn't just connection, it's how strong and open those connections are, basically how much someone is trusted by others in the network. Epstein cultivated his trust graph carefully. He made sure it was diverse and spanned all kinds of industries, localities, and institutions, and he often selected surfaces that had very specific connotations for power and prestige, whether that's Harvard or MIT or the Virgin Islands. Then he leveraged asymmetrical information and gate control to reinforce his trust graph. All of this is why his ability to hold power derived not from legitimacy of character, but from strategic positioning. And it's crucial to understand that he was trusted to maintain confidentiality, to provide access, to not reveal information about others, not because he was trustworthy in absolute terms, but because in this network, mutual vulnerability creates mutual silence. And this is the main reason why people continued to seek his counsel, even after his conviction, which he recognized as having strengthened his position in certain cases. He said, at a certain level of finance, almost everyone is allied with an institutional interest. You're part of government, or you want to be in government, or you're connected to a bank or other portfolio, or you have key relationships with certain corporations or industries. But because of my situation, I have none of that. I have no institutional ties, which makes me, in some sense, one of the few wholly independent sources of information and actual honest brokers. That's the usefulness of disgrace. In these kinds of power networks, the trust graph can actually be reinforced in times of scandal because it creates paradoxical incentives. If everyone is compromised, to go to someone extra compromised for counsel in your own weakness ensures they won't rat you out, which becomes more asymmetric information for the extra compromised person and more leverage for them to gatekeep and manipulate. This topology dovetails well with political theorist Emanuel Wallerstein's idea of world systems theory. He said that we can't really understand the distribution of power and influence between nation states without positioning them within a larger system, which he called the world economy, and that's hyphenated. The topology of extractive capitalism isn't defined by individual states exerting state power. It's defined by the relationships between states and what kind of connections they have. He categorized 3 types of powers: core powers, semi-peripheral, and peripheral powers. All of these powers are characterized by methods of unequal exchange. Core powers extract resources, whether natural or labor, at artificially low value from peripheral powers, which absorb all the things no one wants in core powers, like ecological devastation and extreme poverty. And the semi-periphery buffers this by absorbing things like offshore tax havens and loosened regulation and acting as middlemen. Everyone is continually vying for core status, and core powers are always trying to maintain control and consolidate power for themselves to prevent being downgraded. This type of system is very similar to Epstein's, which is to say the global system of the ultra-wealthy, and why their relationships are often primarily about allegiance to power over any particular nation or identity group or system of belief, despite whatever their public front might be. It's also why their relationships often feature exploitation and even violation. When everything is about power, who has it and how much, extraction and exploitation tend to come with the territory, as abhorrent as that is to those of us on the outside. It's also why the system self-selects for individuals who are more likely to act in concert with it versus move against it. In other words, if we wonder why there is a seemingly high degree of narcissism and sociopathy among the ultra-wealthy and those in positions of great power, it's because these qualities are rewarded in extractive capitalism. By the logic of the market, and we can think of this network as the apotheosis of market logic, to have a conscience is quite literally unprofitable and inefficient. This is the map we can have on hand as we explore Epstein's terrain. We're dealing with a set of relationships that's overlaid on and interdependent with the reality most people know, but that's also apart from it, and it wants to stay that way. However, this does not mean there is a unified group controlling all outcomes in the world, or that this network ultimately resolves in any one or another identity group. Most conspiracy thinking arises from proportionality bias, which is the desire for a sufficiently grand explanation that matches the complexity of large events, plus our psychological needs for certainty and agency. Elite influence is exerted instead via interlocking networks made up of politicians and capital holders and technocrats and social elites who compete, cooperate, and shift alliances in pursuit of advantage, and they often work at cross purposes. Their primary allegiance is to power, and they will overlook almost anything and engage in almost anything in their desire to consolidate it. The double or triple or quadruple dealing, the long list of names involved despite seemingly contradictory public personas, the foreign state connections and sabotage and compromat gathering and complete lack of consideration for anyone deemed peripheral kind of comes with this territory, and we need to see it as such if we want to change it, but expect extreme resistance. As a chaser, I'm going to leave you with Orwell's prescient words from 1984, performed by the actor Christopher Tester. Orwell understood, perhaps better than most, the kind of world we now face.
The party seeks power entirely for its own sake. We are not interested in the good of others. We are interested solely in power. Pure power. What pure power means, you will understand presently. We are different from the oligarchies of the past in that we know what we are doing. All the others, even those who resembled ourselves, were cowards and hypocrites. The German Nazis and the Russian communists came very close to us in their methods, but they never had the courage to recognize their motives. Well, we are not like that. We know that no one ever seizes power with the intention of relinquishing it, power is not a means, it is an end. One does not establish a dictatorship in order to safeguard a revolution. One makes the revolution in order to establish the dictatorship. The object of persecution is persecution. The object of torture is torture. The object of power is power. Now, you begin to understand